Chapter 3, Jewish Fables by E. Michael Jones. The Testimony of Mickey Mouse. This chapter only run 2-3 pages, maybe 4. In spite of the testimony of Mickey Mouse, there is no possible evolutionary link between a mouse's squeak and a man's speech. They exist on fundamentally different ontological planes, even though both are forms of communication. Hamlet and Shakespeare are certainly related, but Hamlet cannot become Shakespeare, or vice versa, because they inhabit different planes of being. The doctrine of gradualism basically denies that there is any clear transition point from pre-human to human. But the existence of language among humans constitutes a clear refutation of that idea. Quote, genetic, psychological, and anatomical features are not the determining factors for being human. Although we do breed, feed, bleed, and excrete like they do, yes, we are connected all the way down. What does in fact set us apart from the animal world is something not necessarily of a biological nature, namely our faculties of language, rationality, morality, self-expression, and religion. End quote. Taken together, this is what the Greeks referred to as logos. The scholastics referred to a man as the animal rationale, in recognition of the fact that he is the only animal that possessed these qualities. There is no evidence that human language evolved gradually from animal communication. Both are what they are. Neither can derive from the other. After years of fruitless attempts to teach monkeys how to talk, the evolutionary linguists were forced to conclude that the emergence of human language is an embarrassment for evolutionary theory. What the Dutch geneticist Gerard Verschuren, Verschuren, considers the fossil evidence for human speech, a piece of ochre with a crosshatch design carved in it which was found in the Blombos cave in South Africa, indicates that language emerged quite suddenly, some 80,000 years ago, a period that corresponds roughly to Harari's cognitive revolution and the emergence of Y-chromosome atom. Once again, the existence of language confounds those who seek its cause in lower forms of life, forcing Verschuren to conclude that the power of using language and the power of conceptual understanding are both uniquely human and therefore cannot be inherited from the animal world. Man's capacity for logos and all of its activities eventually became associated with psyche, or the soul, which, after a long and complicated debate, Aristotle defined as the form of eidos, E-I-D-O-S, eidos, of the body. Aristotle got the term from Plato, his teacher, but refined it from being a pre-existing ghost in a machine into a function of man's activity, which was an expression of his essential being. Arguing by analogy, Aristotle said that if the body were an axe, its soul would be chopping. Similarly, if the body were an eye, its soul would be seeing, something he defined as its first act, which is similar to our concept of purpose. In other words, quote, that which makes a person a human being is a human soul. So how and when did the human soul emerge? Since a soul does not admit of degrees, you either have one or you don't, in our ancestry, there must have been a first creature, or set of creatures, endowed with an immortal human soul and the mental powers of language, rationality, morality, self-awareness, and religion. You either have those faculties or you don't. They don't come in degrees either. End quote. The human race began when the first man spoke the first word, which he probably spoke to the God who created him by endowing him with the soul which allowed him to speak before he spoke to a fellow human being. Such a moment does not admit of gradualist explanations. Then, as now, animals can either speak or they cannot. Those who can are known ipso facto as human beings. In order to continue in existence, the human race needed to be sexually differentiated, which required the creation of another rational creature, just like the first one, who differed in gender. In the Genesis account of creation, man preceded woman. At this point, man could talk to woman in the same way that man had previously talked to God, his creator, because what God and man shared was logos, which he shared in a unique way which separated him from the same logos which was the operating system for all of creation. Verschuren attempts to reconcile the Genesis account and the fossil record by claiming that the preparatory work had to be done gradually, as part of a biological process. This gradual biological process was then followed by a spiritual process in which God chose to raise 2 members of a population of anatomically modern humans to the spiritual level of language, rationality, morality, self-awareness, and religion. Pope John Paul II spoke of an ontological leap, which corresponds in time with Harari's cognitive revolution. Verschuren claims that the human faculties of language, rationality, morality, self-awareness, and religion emerged, both simultaneously and suddenly, somewhere in Africa some 80,000 years ago, as part of an event which was by definition spiritual and therefore beyond the scope of science. That concludes the very short Chapter 3 of E. Michael Jones's Jewish Fables.